And that's a memo. Now for the top story tonight, reaction with us here in New York City, Eric Bolling and Geraldo Vera. What say you, Geraldo?
I think that, thank goodness that you're in favor of background checks for gun purchasers.
80% of Americans, according to the polls, 80% have no problem with background checks.
So why all this fuss then about the president bringing it up?
Because the fuss is that the president is not putting the emphasis on the right place. For example, as I said earlier, if you make gun crimes federal crimes with mandated 10-year prison sentences, you really can cut into the bad guys. Every gun crime
is a federal. But 400 million guns in the United States of America, at what point is it too much?
You can't do anything about that, because that's the Second Amendment. That's what happened here because of the westward expansion.
Well, I don't want to make your hair stand on it, and I think the Second Amendment, as construed by the federal courts in recent decades, is stupid.
But
I think the NRA is full of baloney.
It doesn't matter what you think, because that's the reality, and that's what we want to deal with here. What say you?
I'm glad it doesn't. Geraldo, Bill's right. It doesn't matter what you think. I also agree with your talking points, Bill. President Obama is working on two legacies. It's the climate change issue and the gun issue, because he has to look away, because the real legacy that he should be worried about, the economy, isn't working for him.
292,000 jobs last month.
The stock market.
292,000
numbers, Geraldo.
Wait.
Can we do this? It's the lowest labor participation rate in 40 years. 40 years.
We're in year 8, all right? And median income is still not rising enough to give American workers, no matter how many jobs, it's how will they pay. So I don't want to get into that. That's something for you guys to do on the business end. But you can't deny that President Obama going into the climate precincts, and again, I'm sympathetic with that. I am an environmentalist. I want a cleaner planet. And allowing what's going on with ISIS and allowing what's going on at the southern border.
Well, I agree with you about ISIS,
stuff.
But ask your children, ask your teenagers about climate change. My 10-year-old came to me and said, "Dad, should I be afraid when all that climate change talk was happening?" And I said, she's never come to any other issue
because they're scaring the hell out of the kids. They're scaring them.
But are they? But isn't it a legitimate concern?
It's legitimate, but it isn't an urgent concern, because there's nothing the United States can do if China and India continue to pollute the way they're polluting. We can try, and he should. But he doesn't. He's making this a central part of the presidency.
The essence of your presentation to me sounded like timing is everything in life. In Paris, he shouldn't have talked climate change the way he did, because people were concerned about the 132 people who had just been slaughtered.
That's
in Paris.
right.
So that's about timing. But that doesn't diminish in the big picture climate change, or in a practical sense, the appeal to the millennial voters. The millennial voters.
If you're going to politic it, then you lose me. It's a matter of priorities. First priority for me, getting American workers in a position where their salaries can go up by getting good jobs and letting the free marketplace run. All right? He's failed. Obama has failed with this income redistribution. Go ahead.
Two things. The more imminent threat than climate change or guns are terrorists, homegrown terrorists. Today alone, we have a terror cell discovered in California and in Texas. Your daughter or your son, your 10-year-old, is concerned about climate over being blown up by a fellow student at one of her high schools or future schools.
I'm so glad you said homegrown, Eric, because these are Americans that we are fearful of, rather than make immigrants the boogeyman.
You have a president that can't even call it a terror threat. He can't even call it Islamic terrorism.
I got to warn you, Geraldo, okay? 3 more segments down, you're going to hear a horrifying story about what's happening in Germany with the immigrants.
No,
exactly.
I totally get that. Germany let 1 million in without knowing who they were.
It has to be regulated.
Who is proposing that? I am not.
Well, the Open Border crew, which is most of the Democratic Party in the southern part of the United States, have been proposing it for 30 years.
Can I throw one thing in here? And the most egregious thing of this whole is not that President Obama wants to secure his legacy going forward, because when he's not President Obama, when he's former President Obama, he'll be taking a lot of money from the climate people and the anti-gun lobbies. That's fine. The most alarming thing is that the media is complacent in this. The things you're going to point out later in the show, the rapes that are going on in refugees areas like Germany, they want to do that here. And the media says, you know what, let's talk about President Obama's gun. There was a town hall last night on his gun laws
deny that
that
President Obama's tears were legitimate when he cried,
President
when
Obama
he spoke
cried.
of the Sandy Hook
No, he legitimately cried.
They
he
were
had
legitimate.
emotion, but he didn't have emotion for San Bernardino. He doesn't have emotion when kids are blowing themselves up, when they're shooting each other in Chicago.
All right, I got it.